It all started on a sunny afternoon and when I decided to stop at a cozy coffee shop downtown to get some work done. As I sat down with my laptop and a hot coffee, the bells on the door jingled and in walked one of the most beautiful women I had ever seen. She had long, wavy brown hair that cascaded past her shoulders and piercing green eyes that sparkled like emeralds. Her skin was flawlessly tanned, as if she had just returned from an exotic island vacation. I couldn't take my eyes off of her as she sauntered up to the counter to order an iced coffee, flashing a radiant smile at the barista. After getting her drink, the mystery woman glanced around the cafe, her gaze landing on me. I quickly looked away, embarrassed to be caught staring. To my surprise, she started walking towards my table. "Do you mind if I join you?" she asked in a melodic voice. I stammered a yes and she sat down, introducing herself as Eva. Up close, she was even more stunning. We fell into easy conversation, which was shocking since I was usually shy around beautiful women. There was something magnetic about Eva. She was bubbly and outgoing, asking me thoughtful questions and listening intently when I spoke. The hours flew by as we lost ourselves in conversation. I was captivated by her free spirit, intuition, and lust for life. When she asked for my number, I happily obliged, thrilled at the prospect of seeing her again. We planned a second date, which is when Eva suggested a weekend road trip to Marfa. I was hesitant about traveling so far with someone I just met, but there was something thrilling about Eva's spontaneity that made me want to take the risk. As we drove through the Texan desert from Austin to Marfa, laughter and philosophical discussions filled the air. The more I got to know Eva, the more fascinated I became. She told incredible stories about backpacking through India solo as a college student, running scuba diving tours in Thailand, and spending a year living on a houseboat in Amsterdam. Her adventures painted the picture of a bold, independent, and worldly woman. When we arrived in the quirky art town of Marfa, Eva suggested heading to the outskirts to see the Marfa Lights viewing station at night. Legend has it that mysterious, ghostly orbs of light dance across the desert skies in this region. We drove out into the pitch darkness and sat on the hood of my car, gazing up at the vast night sky dotted with stars. A comfortable silence settled between us as we peered into the darkness, searching for anomalies. After about 15 minutes, Eva broke the silence to confess some of her darker secrets from her past. She told me how she fell in with the wrong crowd as a rebellious teenager and ended up entangled in petty crime and running from the law. While shocked, I was also drawn to this edgy, rule-breaking side of her. In the moment, it felt like by opening up to me, we had forged an unbreakable bond. Under the magic of the starry skies, we shared a passionate kiss. When I awoke the next morning, reaching across the bed to cuddle Eva, my hands grasped at cold, empty sheets. She had vanished without a trace, her side of the bed untouched. I searched everywhere. The hotel lobby, parking lot, nearby cafes. But there was no sign of her or her belongings. She had disappeared like a ghost in the night. I tried calling her several times during my lonely, confused drive back to Austin, but each time it went straight to a generic voicemail recording. Arriving home, I saw I had received a single voicemail from Eva, apologizing for her sudden disappearance, but saying she needed space to contemplate our whirlwind romance. Her tone sounded cold and distant, nothing like the bubbly woman I had known. I tried repeatedly to call the number back, but all I got was an automated message saying the number was disconnected. Over the next few weeks, I became obsessed with piecing together the truth about Eva. Late-night Google searches uncovered that none of the dive companies or hostels in the places she had lived had any record of an employee named Eva. She had lied about her adventures abroad, leaving me to wonder what else she had fabricated. Eventually, I uncovered her real name, Amy Peters. She had left a trail of bewildered ex-boyfriends all over Texas, recounting similar stories of her disappearing unexpectedly. It seemed I was just the latest gullible guy to fall under her spell. One ex theorized she was tangled up with criminals from her youth, which explained her compulsion to constantly be on the run. Just as I was losing hope of ever understanding her motives, creepy things started happening. A dead bird appeared on my doorstep one night, and I frequently noticed a black SUV parked across from my house. One day I arrived home to find my front door ajar, the only things missing some documents from my home office. I also started receiving threatening text messages from an unknown number warning me to stop looking for Amy. One terrifying night, I was ripped from sleep by an intruder standing over me, pressing a knife to my throat. Through a mask, the man told me if I continued my investigation into Amy's whereabouts, I'd end up dead. I reported the attack to the police, but they said there was little they could do without evidence linking this directly to Amy. After that harrowing home invasion, I realized I needed to let this go for my own safety. Amy clearly had dangerous connections from her past who wanted to ensure I stayed silent. A part of me will always feel drawn to her allure, wishing I could see her one more time for answers. But the wise choice is looking ahead and leaving our doomed love affair in the rearview mirror. I hope wherever she ended up, she found a way out of the criminal underworld haunting her. As for me, all I can do now is try to move on, keeping one eye glancing over my shoulder for ghosts from the past. It was supposed to be a fun weekend with the guy I was dating. We had met a few months earlier on a popular dating app and really hit it off. He seemed absolutely perfect at first, handsome, successful, adventurous, and attentive to my needs. I was so excited when he suggested a spontaneous trip to the beach. I'm always up for an adventure, so I happily agreed without hesitation. The first red flag appeared early on when Matt insisted on doing all of the driving himself. He claimed he didn't trust other people's driving skills and felt most comfortable being fully in control behind the wheel. I thought it was a bit odd and controlling, but brushed it off as a harmless quirk. I figured letting him drive would give me more opportunities to relax and enjoy the views along the way. The initial part of the trip was pleasant enough. We chatted lightly about common interests while listening to upbeat music. I was admiring the scenic views of the countryside passing by outside. After stopping for a bite to eat at a cozy cafe, we continued on our way. But gradually Matt's mood shifted from cheerful and enthusiastic to brooding and frustrated. I noticed him getting increasingly impatient with other drivers on the road, even griping over minor things like short traffic delays. His sudden angry outbursts put me on edge, though he'd quickly revert back to his charming self afterwards. Things took a strange turn when we stopped overnight at a roadside motel. After checking in and settling into our room, I realized my phone charger was missing from my bag. When I asked Matt if he had seen it anywhere, he got oddly defensive and insisted he knew nothing about it. I thought it was weird but let it go. The next morning, however, I discovered my makeup bag was also nowhere to be found in my luggage. Once again, Matt denied any knowledge of its whereabouts, though I was now certain he was lying. Warning bells were going off in my head. Despite the growing uneasiness in my gut, we continued on to the coast as planned. The charming and fun version of Matt soon re-emerged, eagerly suggesting a remote hiking trail away from other beachgoers. I wasn't comfortable wandering off alone with him at this point, so I firmly requested we relax on the main public beach instead. He begrudgingly agreed, though his smile seemed forced and insincere. While Matt was swimming in the ocean, I decided to discreetly look through his bag in the trunk. What I found made my blood turn cold. There were multiple wallets, IDs, and credit cards, all with different names. Digging further, I was horrified to uncover several driver's licenses of attractive young women, motel keys in various states, and handwritten notes with addresses. It was suddenly clear this man who had seemed so perfect was not at all who he claimed to be. I was utterly terrified, realizing Matt had lured me away under false pretenses. Here I was trapped hours from home in an isolated place with a complete stranger. A stranger who had hid his true self behind a charming facade. I knew I needed to get away from him immediately by any means necessary. When Matt returned, I told him I wasn't feeling well and wanted to head back right away. As expected, his eyes flashed with anger briefly before he reverted to concerned and accommodating mode. He smoothly tried convincing me to spend the night and rest up for the drive home tomorrow. But I stood firm, insisting I really needed to leave tonight even if I had to get a ride from someone else. After trying to persuade me to stay a while longer, Matt finally reluctantly agreed to begin the long drive back. That agonizingly slow drive felt endless as I stayed hypervigilant, waiting for the charming mask to slip off again. But Matt maintained his polite and bubbly demeanor, skillfully hiding the predator lurking right below the surface. I asked to be dropped off at a friend's house, lying that she had an important item I'd forgotten at home. I'm not sure if he bought it, but he allowed me to leave without any further incident. Over the next few days, I filed a police report about the fake IDs and belongings I'd found in Matt's bag. It turned out they had already been searching for him under a few different aliases. I made sure to spread the word about Matt both online and to women in my social circles, so no one else would be tricked by his act. It's been months now since that harrowing trip with the charismatic stranger. I still feel shaken when I let my mind wander back to how close I came to danger. I now make a point to really take my time getting to know someone before placing any trust in them. Any controlling behaviors, inconsistencies, or red flags are now immediate deal breakers. But most of all, I'm just grateful I was able to escape what could have been a deadly situation. The charming facade successfully hid a calculating predator who was likely searching for his next unsuspecting victim. I'm just thankful that wasn't me. When I first met John at a mutual friend's party, I was charmed by his good looks and great sense of humor. But after a few weeks of dating, some eccentricities began to emerge. He'd constantly look over his shoulder when we were out to dinner, or take a circuitous route home from my apartment, as if making sure we weren't followed. I figured he watched too many spy movies and chalked it up to an overactive imagination. But over the next few months, his paranoid behaviors became more pronounced. He started refusing to meet at popular restaurants, saying he preferred hole-in-the-wall places where we wouldn't be noticed. He installed extra locks on his apartment door and shut the blinds tightly at night. On weekends at my place, he would get up repeatedly to peer out the window or check that the front door was locked. When I gently suggested therapy for what seemed like irrational anxiety, he refused. As much as I wanted to be supportive of quirks I figured came from past trauma, his level of fear was exhausting to deal with daily. I started questioning the viability of our relationship. It wasn't until the night I woke to the sound of shattering glass that I considered he may be right to be so paranoid. Someone had thrown a brick through the living room window of my ground floor apartment. John seemed barely surprised as he wordlessly boarded up the window, only muttering, "I told you so." No matter how much I pleaded to call the police, he refused. In that moment, I knew his fears were real and greater than I'd comprehended. In the following weeks, the sense that we were being watched escalated. I would come home to find my apartment clearly ransacked, my belongings strewn across the floor, yet no sign of forced entry. Strange voicemails would be left on my phone at odd hours, with only the sound of breathing or sinister laughter. My tires were slashed in the parking garage at work. The feeling of violation was joined by a gnawing sense that significant danger lurked out there. I finally demanded John reveal what he thought was going on. Reluctantly, he explained his past involvement in shady business deals that went bad. Powerful, dangerous people had lost significant money on a deal John made happen, and they blamed him fully. For years after that deal went south, John laid low, moving around and avoiding anything that might make him traceable. But somehow, these threatening figures had picked up his trail again once we started seriously dating. His paranoid behaviors were designed to protect us from them. I was horrified to realize the man I loved was tangled up in something far beyond my worst imaginations. John swore we would be safe if we kept moving, never staying anywhere more than a few nights. Terrified at what might happen if we didn't, I emptied my savings account and we hit the road. But it seemed these mysterious, threatening forces knew our every move. No matter what remote, run-down motel we hid in each night, something would happen to remind us we were not alone. One evening we returned from a quick supply run to find our motel room clearly searched again. John grabbed my hand and pulled me back to the car, insisting we just drive through the night until exhaustion overtook us. As dawn broke, we pulled into a deserted rest stop to get a few hours of sleep. I stirred to the feeling of a hand over my mouth. My eyes shot open to see a menacing figure looming over me in the back seat. John was already awake in the driver's seat, holding a finger to his lips, eyes wide with terror. We sat paralyzed, waiting to see if the intruder would harm us. After what felt like an eternity, the figure slowly backed out of the car and disappeared into the morning fog. John fired up the engine and sped back onto the highway. I was shaking, tears running down my cheeks. He just kept whispering, "I'm so sorry," as we drove aimlessly for 3 states before stopping again. Using the last of his cash, John got us a room at a nicer chain hotel, thinking they may have better security. But neither of us could sleep. At the slightest noise, we'd jump or peek out the curtains. I knew the terror wouldn't end until we made a stand, so for the first time I demanded John tell me exactly who he thought was after him. He reluctantly gave me names and probable locations. The next morning when he was in the shower, I slipped out and dropped John at a cafe with orders to wait for me. Then I walked straight into the local police station and unloaded the whole story. It took months of investigation and arrests, but eventually all of the men John feared were apprehended. Turns out he wasn't their only victim. I wish I could say we returned to normal life after it was all over, but nothing felt the same. John insisted I must have been followed to the police station and refused to stay still for long. As much as it hurt, I had to let the relationship go for my own sanity. Now I find myself constantly checking the rearview mirror when I drive, having trouble relaxing in my own home. Every strange sound puts me on high alert. I know the threat is extinguished, yet the lingering fear remains. I'm hopeful the residual paranoia and terror of those months on the run will fade in time. and that we will both be able to find peace again.